Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors. And if you're new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community. And without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. And the first one starts like this. I had a neighbor from hell. This was a woman who lived in a tiny rundown rental house next to the tiny down rental house I lived in right after college. She was probably in her mid to late 40s, given that she had a daughter in high school, but looked much older in a way I would later come to associate with use of drugs. She worked as a lunch lady at the middle school, and I have to imagine she was the lunch lady the kids were scared of. She had moved to town from New York City, where her possibly ex-husband ostensibly lived. He occasionally sent her money. She had a range of paranoid political opinions, many of them centered around the idea that those people ruined New York City and now they are coming here. Here was Western Massachusetts, and those people were usually Puerto Ricans, although she was not terribly fond of any other identifiable group of people either. The really unpleasant part was the smell. Her house stank of cigarette smoke, spoiled food, unspecified chemical horribleness. For all I know, she could have been cooking meth in there. Her house would have had the same architecture as mine, with a dirt floor cellar beneath that could probably conceal some chemical sins and possibly bodies, especially in the sub-freezing winter. I felt pretty bad for her daughter, although her daughter's rather older boyfriend could just F off with his oversized pickup truck that was always blocking in my car. Actually, I was a bit relieved when the daughter eventually moved in with Truck Dude. Creepy as it was, it meant she didn't have to live in that stinky house. Also, I didn't have to edge my way around his truck in the driveway. But the following spring, the smell got a bunch worse. Eventually, our landlady showed up and revealed the horror. Scary lunch lady neighbor hadn't turned her heat on all winter, and her sewer pipes had blocked, frozen and cracked, filling her cellar up with fresh frozen raw sewage. Spring comes around, the ground thaws and the stink emerges. Yeah, I moved not long after that. And the next one, a few years ago there was a couple that lived next door, both business school students. They were away for the fall term on internship and really didn't show up until December, after it had started snowing. We share a walkway that splits right before it leads up to our respective porch steps. I had been kind enough to shovel their walk every time it snowed, just in case they came home. I thought it would suck if they had to trudge through it. Come January, we got a nor'easter with way more snow than expected, 18 inches overnight. I've got class, so I skipped breakfast and spent an hour digging out my car. The snowbank in front of my parking spot is about 8 feet tall by this point, and I physically cannot shovel any more snow onto it, so I start piling it on the sidewalk. I made sure there's a clear path for people to walk through until the sidewalk plow comes through, and then take off just in time for class. By 9:30 a.m., this was a storm that took a full day or two to collectively sort out. I had a formal letter of rebuke from the property manager for the small pile of snow on the sidewalk because the neighbor complained. Property manager gave me a bunch of crap about proper snow management etiquette, and I set her straight and told her to inform my neighbors that I would never again shovel their walk while they were away. A couple weeks later we got a very light dusting, less than half an inch, and that woman scraped away the snow on their half of our shared walkway just to make a point. There was literally a line down the middle of the walkway where she scraped from. She gave my roommate and I death glares every time she saw us. Meanwhile, her husband was the nicest, friendliest guy, but she was always nagging him. I was so happy when they moved, I had to resist the urge to tell him to run before they had kids. And guys, if you have watched until here and enjoyed the neighbor stories, I would be really happy if you could please like the video and maybe even post some star emojis in the comments if you want to go the extra mile. Thank you so much in advance, it really helps my channel a lot. Anyway, the next one starts like this. About 3 years ago, my wife and I live in a sort of quadplex where there were 4 apartments in a building, 2 on the ground floor and 2 on the second floor. We were on the bottom floor with very nice quiet neighbors above us. The issue came from the people across the hall. For 1 year, the apartment was occupied by the most self-centered, idiotic college students. The odd thing about that apartment was that every year around the beginning of the fall semester, a different set of college students of a specific nationality would move in, but the furniture never changed. Never could figure that out. Anyway, the ones that sucked were a guy and girl, both in their early 20s, that didn't seem to grasp the idea of noise laws. Every weekend, they would be having some loud party, blasting music and hanging out outside smoking. Now, I'm a reasonable person. Yeah, maybe the law and the lease say to shut up after 10 PM, but I will give until 12 or 1 before I do anything. After their first few parties, I went over, asked them if they could stop playing loud music after midnight, as my girlfriend, now wife, and I work mornings. They acted like I was a huge killjoy dick, and he essentially said that they would do what they wanted. That was a dumb idea on their part, so I wait until the next weekend when they have a big party. Lots of people, loud music, the works. Finally, I start smelling weed around 11:30 and I realize this is my big break. I find the police non-emergency number and call them, playing the innocent. My neighbors are playing loud music and I smell something weird, but I don't know what it is. Card. We lived in a nice middle-class, somewhat conservative neighborhood, so I knew the cops would jump on that with both feet, and they did. Within 10 minutes, 2 squad cars rolled up and parked on the street. Luckily, they hadn't turned their music down or stopped smoking, so you immediately knew where their apartment was. I moved to my door to eavesdrop. Cops walk in and knock on the door. Idiot neighbors don't even turn down their music when they answer. Cop immediately turns on hard-ass mode and starts in on them about the noise violations. I can hear the female neighbor just feebly apologizing. Then the cop says, "I know what that smell is. I know you know what it is, and if I have to come back here tonight, I will take everyone in this place down to the station." The male neighbor says something like, "Please don't, we'll stop." The cops then proceeded to hang out for about 5 minutes as the guests get in their cars and leave. Everything is nice and quiet for the next several months. When the summer starts rolling around, I notice the neighbors have begun to have people over again. I don't care, everyone has guests, but then one night in early summer they are hanging out on their back porch and start playing loud music at like 1 AM. I decide to just jump straight to calling the cops. Same story as before, except the cop apparently actually wrote them up this time and gave them some kind of citation. Eventually they left and were replaced by a different set of students, but they were really courteous neighbors. Looking back, I really wish they had just been nice about me asking them to not be so loud. It's a funny story, but I don't want to have to call the authorities on people over something that should be handled between 2 people. And the next one is titled, Damn Karen. I have the biggest Karen living in my neighborhood, so we bought our home around 3 years ago. At the time of purchase, we signed a set of bylaws for the subdivision that were laid out in the 60s when the neighborhood was being built. These rules included things like you couldn't have a separate building such as a shed, pool house, carport and garage. Now several, I would even go as far as to say the majority of homes, including mine and my grandparents who moved in 77, have RV covers, carports, sheds or workshops, and the house across the street has a pool house. So needless to say, the original bylaws were never upheld. In October of 2018, we had our little girl at 26 weeks and spent the next 4 months in an ICU. In December, on one of the rare occasions I came home, a neighbor came by with some paperwork saying there was a house renting on VRBO and it needed to be taken care of. I needed to sign this paper and get it back to her by 31st December so she could get it filed. I ignored the issue. I don't care what someone else does with their property as long as it does not affect me, which this never did. The house was rarely rented out, and when it was always really quiet. I never heard anything, saw trash thrown about, etc. But anyway, apparently she gathered enough signatures to amend the original bylaws to include a ban on renting VRBO. She then took the homeowner, who was my friend and who lived in a different state by the way, to court, won, and had it put in the judgment they had to sell their frickin' house. So at this same time she came out up with the idea of starting an HOA, that way our neighborhood could stay safe and be able to take care of any problem that would arise. No elaboration. October 2019, she then began collecting signatures to add a new amendment to include forming an HOA. She and another lady in our neighborhood who is a notary collected and notarized signatures, and once she believed she had her 2/3 vote she thinks she needed, she filed the paperwork. She had been having neighborhood meetings. I know of 19 out of 47 homeowners who were never notified of meetings until I found out about one and posted about a sign at the end entrance/exit of the subdivision. Once we all showed up at this meeting, we were informed that the HOA had passed and we were all obligated to follow the rules and pay the dues that would be determined. I, along with the other 19 homeowners, made it very clear we were not part of any HOA and would not be participating or paying any dues. Shortly after this, I received an email saying that board members would be voted on via email and $25 yearly dues were due and I could make my check payable to her name. Other homeowners received an email saying that there was a one-time initiation fee of $115 plus the $25 yearly due and thanking them for their contribution for legal fees for taking the VRBO house to court. Like, how much money has this lady gotten out of people? All this to say, I checked her math multiple ways: votes per lot, votes per fraction of a lot, votes per number of owners, like every stupid way possible. The only way I can think I didn't do it was by value of the home to value of the entire subdivision. Anyway, she never had over a 60% vote in favor for starting an POA. I've called her out on it and she refuses to acknowledge it. She is a realtor and there are a couple houses in the neighborhood for sale. I looked at the listings and noticed that one who signed for the HOA has association fees of $25. The other home who didn't sign for the HOA does not have association fees listed. She is also now, well, I'm sorry, I don't know for sure who, someone has called the city on all us heathens that won't sign the HOA, so the city has been writing warnings to almost everyone for something or another. Mine for a pile of brush left after cleaning out a flower bed and my grass being over 6 inches tall, neighbor for a stack of tile in her driveway, and another for having a ladder and an inflatable boat on a dolly in their yard, and another for leaves in the ditch, and so many other crazy offenses. Obviously, she is calling the city because she knows the HOA cannot do anything, or at least she knows we know she cannot do anything. My concern is she is taking advantage of the elderly in the neighborhood that feel like the HOA is making them safe. She asked my elderly neighbor if she needed any groceries since she shouldn't be getting out with all the virus around. My neighbor said no, she was fine, and then the lady turned around and said, "Oh, okay, well, do you have your $25 for dues?" My neighbor's exact words were, "I gave it to her. I'm afraid of what she would do to me if I didn't." Not that she thought she was being physically threatened, but she literally thinks she could lose her home over not paying these bullies. Is there anything I can try to give or say to these elderly to make them not feel threatened by her or the other board members? I have plenty more details if you have questions. And the next one, my next door neighbor is cheating on her husband with another neighbor across the street. None of my business, honestly. What was annoying was how damn obvious it was and the whole behavior of the situation. The next door neighbors have 2 kids, both boys, and the neighbor across the street has a daughter. Husband would be playing in the backyard with their kids and she would sneak out the front door and immediately beeline it across the street, coming out of his house like 25 to 30 minutes later and going back inside from the front. On the weekends, the husband would be working and it seemed like almost as soon as he left, she would be heading across the street. Sometimes she would bring her kids along, but they were always stuck outside with the other guy's daughter. The 3 of them were not being supervised in any capacity and were just running around in the streets. One of them ended taking a stick and running it across the passenger side of my car, putting a very long deep scratch. When her kids were not running wild, she would just leave them in the house alone. I never heard any screaming or crying, but it still irked me that she was basically abandoning them to have intercourse with another guy. I think the husband found out though. She has been at the other guy's house for the past 4 days straight with her kids. Husband's car is gone, all their lights are out and off. So looks like I got another abandoned house on my block, which is also pretty annoying. And the next one, my neighbor has to show off all his toys, which are relatively expensive and must make noise. 3 vehicles in the driveway/garage, the regular driven car goes in the garage and a beat up van with no muffler and some other loud POS are behind it. Both have to be moved to let the real vehicle out when he goes to work at 4:30 AM. I know there's a powerful stereo system in the regular car, which is about the only thing he does not blast. However, there's a different dude that drives around the neighborhood to cover that. Why rake when you can use a leaf blower at least a dozen times today, since it was a little windy and a few leaves actually hit the ground. He does part of our yard since the 2 trees are on his property but fall into our yard. All goes to a pile in the far corner of his backyard, the one that takes the longest path around the house, so he's got the most pushing to do. Riding lawnmower as well, used much more frequently, a few times a week than necessary. It makes more noise than the leaf blower, so I'm kinda surprised he doesn't use that to mulch the leaves. Snow? Enough to leave a footprint for half an hour before it melts away in the afternoon sun? Screw that, break out the snowblower, heavy wet crap accumulating more than a few inches. Toss it all down into the street in the 3 feet between his driveway and ours, because plow poop is not enough to have to dig through when there is accumulation. Oh, and another new snowstorm after midnight? Gotta do it before going to sleep to get up for that 4:30 AM car juggle. Have had rocks from the snowblower hit our window twice, once at 2 AM or so, thankfully neither has done damage. I've had our landlord turn off the external outlets on that side of the house because I'm pretty sure, though could never confirm, he was running extension cords from our outlets for some of his toys and other projects in his driveway. Best part is now, it is not just us two, it is also our 2 sons that are in the closer bedroom to his garage. Thankfully they both sleep like I do usually, so sleep through everything. He must also have a police scanner, because the few times I've called the police non-emergency number for noise complaints, the post-midnight snow blowing etc., they always seem to stop before the cops get here. Very happy we are in the process of moving out. Sucks because the landlord is so chill and has a contractor. Being a landlord is almost a hobby for him. He's forgotten to cash more than 1 rent check, but glad to be away from that guy. And ripe stars, unfortunately we have already reached the end of today's video. I hope you enjoyed the content. However, if you cannot wait for more ripe content, then I suggest you head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube, where you can find more exclusive Reddit content read by me. Patreon subscriptions start at just $1 per month, and for $1 your name will show up at the end of each of my new videos. However, if you are willing to spend $3 per month, you will get access to more than 50 exclusive Reddit videos, mostly just no mother-in-law stories. However, please understand, I don't want to pressure anyone into spending money, because I am already incredibly grateful that you watch my videos every single day. Thank you so much for your daily support, it really means the world to me, and I hope to see you again tomorrow for the next video.